The penthouse lights of Manhattan glittered like 1,000 indifferent stars as Elena slammed the heavy oak door behind her. The echo bounced off marble floors that had cost more than most people's yearly salary. Her Louis Vuitton suitcase, packed with only the essentials, no jewelry, no designer labels she didn't truly love, sat at her feet like a quiet rebellion. Her husband, Richard, the hedge fund kingpin worth 9 figures, was still in Tokyo closing another deal. He wouldn't even know she was gone until the morning when his assistant forwarded the divorce papers she'd had drawn up weeks ago. She stepped into the private elevator, heart hammering, and whispered to herself, "This is it. I'm choosing alive over comfortable."
Down on the street, rain slicked the sidewalks. A beat-up old Jeep waited at the curb, engine rumbling like it had something to prove. Marcus leaned against the hood in a faded hoodie, rain dripping from his dark curls, eyes lighting up the second he saw her. No Rolex, no driver, just him, and that fire in his chest that had pulled her in like gravity from the first conversation. You're probably already leaning in, wondering, why would any woman walk away from private jets and infinity pools for a guy who sometimes eats ramen for dinner? Stick with me, because this isn't some fairy tale fantasy. This is the raw, uncomfortable truth that's playing out in penthouses, beach mansions, and luxury condos around the world right now. And by the time we reach the end of Elena's story, and the stories of dozens of women just like her, you'll never look at success the same way again. Let's rewind 6 months. Elena had everything most people dream about. Richard had swept her off her feet 5 years earlier at a charity gala. He was charming in that boardroom alpha way. Sharp suits, effortless confidence. The kind of man who could negotiate $1 billion merger before breakfast.
Their wedding made page 6. The honeymoon? A private island in the Maldives. She woke up to fresh mangoes and ocean views while Richard checked stock tickers on his phone. At first, the life felt like winning the lottery. Designer everything, front row seats at Fashion Week, vacations that normal people only see on Instagram. But slowly, the shine wore off like cheap gold plating. Richard was never there. Even when he was physically present, his mind was somewhere else, calculating returns, chasing the next zero on his net worth. Conversations became transactions. "How was your day, babe?" turned into, "Did you schedule the caterer for the investor dinner?" Sex became scheduled, efficient, almost corporate. Gifts arrived like clockwork. Diamonds for anniversaries, cars for birthdays. But they felt like payments, not love.
Elena tried to ignore the growing emptiness. She told herself this was what power couples did. She filled her days with charity boards, Pilates, and lunch dates with other wives who smiled through the same quiet desperation. One afternoon at a rooftop brunch, her friend Claire, married to a tech billionaire, leaned in and whispered, "I'd trade all this for a man who actually sees me. Not my Instagram feed. Me." They laughed it off, but the words stuck. Then she met Marcus. It happened at a low-key volunteer event for a clean water startup in the Bronx. Elena had gone because Richard's company sponsored it for tax write-offs, and he needed her there for the photo op. Marcus was the founder, broke by any traditional measure, living in a tiny walk-up with 3 roommates and pouring every cent into prototypes and community pilots. No investors yet. Just a wild idea, late nights, and a belief that one day this tech would change millions of lives in developing countries. He wasn't polished. His jeans had holes. His laugh was loud and real. When he spoke about the villages he'd visited, his eyes lit up with a passion that made the entire room lean forward. He didn't talk at people. He pulled them into the vision. For the first time in years, Elena felt something stir that wasn't boredom or obligation. She asked questions. He listened, really listened, like her thoughts mattered more than her last name or her husband's portfolio. That night, they grabbed cheap tacos from a food truck after the event. No reservations, no sommelier, just plastic chairs, hot sauce, and conversation that flowed until 2 a.m. Marcus talked about failure, the 3 startups that had crashed and burned before this one. He talked about sleeping in his car during the lean years. And then he talked about why he kept going. The little girl in Kenya who died from contaminated water. The promise he'd made to her mother. Money comes and goes, he said, shrugging. But purpose? That's the only thing that doesn't quit on you.
Elena went home that night to Richard snoring in their king-sized bed and realized she hadn't felt that alive in years. The contrast hit like a freight train. Richard's world was built on having. Marcus's world was built on becoming. One was static luxury. The other was messy, uncertain, electric forward motion. You might be thinking, okay, but money still matters, right? Women don't just throw away security for vibes. And you're half right. Evolutionary psychology backs it up. Women have wired preferences for partners who can provide stability. Studies across cultures show that ambition, earning potential, and the capacity to create resources matter more to women than raw looks or charm alone. But here's the twist that changes everything. Once basic security is met, what women crave next isn't more zeros in a bank account. It's leadership with heart. It's a man who has a mission bigger than himself. A man whose purpose makes her feel like she's part of something legendary. Richard had the money, but he treated Elena like an accessory. Beautiful, useful, but ultimately replaceable if the deal required it. Marcus had almost nothing material, but he treated her like a co-creator. He asked her opinion on the startup's next pivot. He celebrated her small wins like they were his own. He made her feel necessary. Over the next months, the affair wasn't about sex or rebellion. It was about waking up. Elena started sneaking away to help Marcus with late-night grant applications. She watched him pitch to skeptical investors and get turned down, then dust himself off and refine the pitch with even more fire. His resilience wasn't performative. It was bone deep. And every time he looked at her, she felt chosen. Not for her status, not for what she could do for his image, but for her.
Meanwhile, cracks in Richard's world widened. One night he came home from a deal gone sideways and snapped at her over nothing. "You don't understand the pressure," he barked. "This is how we keep this," he gestured at the penthouse, alive. The money had become a cage, his control disguised as provision. The gifts stopped feeling generous and started feeling like hush money for the loneliness. Elena tried to talk to him. "I need more than this life, Richard. I need us." He laughed it off. "Babe, you have everything. What more could you want?" Exactly. He couldn't even hear the question. That's when the research I dug into started making terrifying sense. Anonymous stories from women in the same position flood forums and private conversations. The controlling behavior masked by luxury vacations. The emotional unavailability excused by "I'm building an empire." The narcissism that turns a wife into a trophy.
One woman wrote, "He used his wealth to justify everything. Late nights, no affection, even affairs, because I provide. But providing isn't just money, it's presence." Another said she left her multimillionaire husband because he made me feel like a well-kept pet. The broke guy I'm with now makes me feel like a partner in a revolution. Science backs the gut feeling. Psychologists studying long-term relationships find that once a certain income threshold is crossed, enough to cover safety and comfort, relationship satisfaction hinges far more on shared purpose, emotional attunement, and mutual growth than on additional wealth. Money can buy the house, but it can't buy the feeling of being truly seen. Jordan Peterson has pointed out in lectures that women don't just want wealth, they want a man with the capacity to generate it, through drive and productivity. A man with purpose signals exactly that. He's not coasting on what he already has. He's building.
and that forward momentum is magnetic.
Elena's breaking point came on a random Tuesday. Richard had missed their anniversary, again, for a board meeting. He sent flowers and a note. "Make it up to you soon, love. Buy whatever you want." She stared at the note, then at the empty penthouse, and something inside her snapped clean in two. She called Marcus. "I'm done pretending," she said. His voice, calm and certain, replied, "Then come build something real with me." Now picture the scene again. Elena in the rain, suitcase at her feet, climbing into that beat-up Jeep. Marcus didn't promise her the world. He promised her his world, the uncertain, passionate, purpose-driven one. And in that moment, it felt like the richest offer she'd ever received. But the story doesn't end at the curb, because walking away from wealth is never clean. Friends called her crazy. Family worried she'd regret it. Richard's lawyers descended like sharks. The tabloids had a field day. Socialite dumps billionaire for struggling entrepreneur. What was she thinking? Elena had moments of doubt. Nights when the new apartment, tiny, leaky, smelling of takeout and hope, felt claustrophobic compared to the penthouse. Marcus worked 18-hour days. There were weeks when they ate rice and beans. But here's what kept her anchored. Every morning, Marcus would pull her close and say, "We're in this together. Today we move the mission forward." He'd share his failures openly, ask for her input like it was gold, and celebrate tiny victories with the same energy most men reserve for closing million-dollar deals. She wasn't an accessory anymore. She was essential. Fast forward 18 months. Marcus's startup landed its first major grant, then a second. Investors started circling. The technology began saving real lives in pilot villages. Elena, now running the nonprofit arm, felt more fulfilled than she ever had, curating charity galas for Richard's tax benefits. Their life wasn't luxurious, but it was alive. Passionate arguments turned into deeper connection. Laughter came easy. And the sex? It wasn't scheduled. It was spontaneous, hungry, born from genuine desire rather than obligation. Richard, meanwhile, had already moved on to wife number 3, a younger model who smiled perfectly for the cameras. The cycle continued. Elena heard through mutual friends that he still worked 100-hour weeks and complained that no one understands the pressure. The pattern repeats across countless lives. Take Lisa, a former marketing executive married to a real estate mogul in Miami. Private yachts, VIP tables, the works. But her husband treated her dreams like cute hobbies.
When she wanted to launch her own consulting firm focused on women in tech, he laughed. "Babe, why? I make enough for both of us." She stayed for the lifestyle until the emotional starvation became unbearable. Then she met Jamal, a community organizer with big plans for urban green spaces and almost no savings. He listened to her ideas for hours, helped her build a business plan on his kitchen table, and celebrated her first client like it was a moon landing. She left the mansion for a modest duplex and never looked back. "Money gave me comfort," she says now. "Purpose gave me a life." Or consider the story of Sophia, whose tech CEO husband funded her every whim, but never showed up for the hard stuff. Her mother's illness, her career setbacks, the quiet fears she carried. She met Diego, a broke but visionary filmmaker documenting climate stories in the global south. His apartment had one chair and a laptop. But when she talked, he heard her. He wove her feedback into his scripts. He made her feel like the muse and the partner. She traded country club brunches for late-night editing sessions and says the trade-off was the best decision of her life. What's the real reason threading all these stories together? It's not that women suddenly hate money. Money still matters. Security matters. But once that baseline is covered, the human heart doesn't run on spreadsheets. It runs on meaning. Purpose in a man signals something primal and modern at the same time. He's not just surviving. He's leading toward a future worth building.
He has self-worth that doesn't need constant external validation from quarterly earnings. He offers emotional authority, the quiet confidence of a man who knows his direction and invites her to walk it with him instead of demanding she stay in his shadow. Psychologists call this interdependence. Couples who share goals, values, and a sense of mission report higher satisfaction than those who simply share bank accounts. Money without mission creates the hedonic treadmill. You get used to the luxury, then need more to feel anything at all. Purpose creates compounding interest in the relationship itself. Every win feels shared, every setback a chance to grow closer.
Think about it this way. A rich man without purpose often becomes a provider who performs love through purchases. A man with purpose, even if currently broke, performs love through presence, vision, and partnership. Women aren't wired to stay with the former once they've tasted the latter. It's why so many high-earning women in surveys say they'd rather struggle with a passionate partner than coast with an empty one. It's why evolutionary signals of ambition and drive keep winning long-term. Of course, not every broke with purpose guy is a catch. Some are just dreamers without discipline. Some use purpose as an excuse for irresponsibility. The real ones, the Marcus types, combine vision with relentless action. They fail forward. They take ownership. They make their partner feel safe because of their direction, not despite it.
Elena and Marcus are married now. Their wedding was small. Backyard, string lights, friends who believed in the mission. No destination blowout. But the toasts weren't about net worth. They were about impact. Today, their startup is scaling globally. They still argue about money sometimes. Budgeting is real when you're building something from scratch. But the arguments end in teamwork, not resentment. She wakes up excited. She goes to bed feeling chosen. If you're watching this and you're a man, wondering how to become the guy women choose over the rich but empty alternative, here's the unfiltered truth. Cultivate purpose like it's your most valuable asset. Build something bigger than your comfort. Develop the discipline to chase it even when no one's watching. Learn to listen, really listen, to the woman in your life.
And if you're a woman who's felt that quiet ache in a beautiful life that still feels hollow, know you're not crazy. You're not ungrateful. You're human. The heart wants more than provision. It wants partnership in a purpose worth waking up for. Elena still drives past the old penthouse sometimes on her way to the office. The lights are still on. Richard's new wife smiles from the balcony in the photos that hit the gossip sites, but Elena doesn't feel envy anymore. She feels free. Because in the end, the real reason women leave rich men for broke men with purpose isn't about trading luxury for struggle. It's about trading emptiness for aliveness, trading performance for presence, trading a life that looks perfect on paper for one that feels electric in the soul. And once you've tasted that kind of alive, there's no going back.
So tell me in the comments, what's the biggest lesson you're taking away from Elena's story? Have you ever felt that pull between comfort and calling? Drop it below, because this conversation is just getting started, and the next story might be yours. If this hit home, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more raw truths about love, power, and what really makes us choose each other. Because at the end of the day, the richest life isn't the one with the biggest bank account. It's the one with the deepest purpose, and the person brave enough to chase it with you.